Welcome, I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts with the objective of improving your management skills and growing your business. Pause the video right now so that you can grab a notepad and a pen because I want you to make a commitment that you will take notes, jot something down, write down some sort of action item that you will implement in your business today. That's what it's all about, implementation and driving your business forward. Have you heard this expression? No news is good news. No news is good news. Not. It is not. No news is not good news. Who says this? And where did this come from? I got to imagine that this comes from in the past where, people were waiting on an update on some sort of tragedy that might be imminent or whatever, and they haven't heard anything. So as they're commiserating with one another, they say, well, no news is good news. We would have heard something, and that phenomenon, that tendency for bad news to travel faster, maybe that contributed to, I haven't looked at where this idiom originated, but maybe it originated because bad news tends to travel faster and people concluded, well, if we haven't heard anything, that's probably a good thing. No news is good news. And I know in the healthcare industry, at least in a lot of areas and geographical regions, that if you go in and you get tested for something and the test is negative, they don't get back to you. They only get back to you if the test is positive, and they've got to give you directions on what the next steps are. I've always thought that was silly. No news is not good news, and you and I, our discussions are meant to improve your management skills and grow your business, make you and your team more effective. And I can tell you, in the context of business, no news is not good news. If you want to play fill in the blank, no news is blank. No news is at minimum unfriendly. No news is impolite, inconsiderate. No news is uncourteous. No news is unprofessional. No news is infuriating to those who are waiting on news. So again, it may be when somebody hasn't initiated a contact, then no news could be good news. That is, any unsolicited news may be unwelcome news. But in business, why I used to talk to my team about this a lot, and I want to remind my team and you and your team that no news is not good news, is because we engage one another. Communication is a culture that we want to see. And to the degree that you would like to instill a culture of good communication in your organization, you want to support those values, and you want to support those best habits and practices that lead to better communication. And that's what various stakeholders appreciate, and that adds value. So consider some of the ways that this may occur in your business. Certainly between you and the customers, from a customer perspective, no news is not good news. So maybe they engage with you for your product or service and they're waiting on delivery, or they are expecting an update or some sort of customer support, some feedback, and they hear nothing from you. That is infuriating for the customer. That's just bad service. And you can appreciate this. But I want you to think within your organization as well where this happens. Certainly, you as the boss, you communicate with your team and you expect an answer from your team. And your team also expects answers from one another and from you as we communicate. So maybe you send an email communication to somebody and you have to follow up on it. You never hear back from them. It's very frustrating. And it's like, well, why didn't the person get back to me? You feel just like that customer who never heard back from the organization. And I used to be driven nuts when a customer would call and complain and use the following line: once they had my money, it was like they didn't even care. Oh, I hated to hear that, because we never want a customer to feel like we don't care, and certainly we don't want them to feel that just because we got the money, we engaged in the commerce, and now we've got the money, we don't care anymore. That's the worst thing that you want your customers to feel. So why does this occur? The primary reason that I see and I've observed and I've heard in terms of excuse making from those who have been accused or guilty of doing this is that they didn't have any news to report. There was no information. They were waiting on data. They were waiting on feedback from a third-party source or whatever. So in the case of a customer, and the customer in my example was waiting on delivery and wanted to know when that might occur or whatever, and you need to know from the shipping company. You're waiting to hear back from them or whatever, so you don't give any information to your customer. Well, the customer's frustrated. And you say, well, I didn't have any news. I was waiting to hear back from this third party. Or there's another member of the team who's involved in the production and in the delivery of the service, and I've got to wait and hear back from them. That's the most common thing people are saying. And it's with your team as well, not just between you and your customers, the communications between you and your team members and one another, your team members and you, that two-way street. Often what people will do is they will wait until they have all the information before they respond, and that is a problem. That is not a best practice. What you should do instead is you should get back within a very reasonable time frame, and you have to define that. I would, you've got to be empathic to the other people, and I would say certainly no longer than a 24-hour period within the same business day. Unless it's at the end of the day, certainly within the next business day, you want to have replied and stated to the person that essentially acknowledges that you received their query and you appreciate that, and you're going to investigate, you're going to get all the information and get back to them, and some sort of response so they know, oh, okay, well, they are working on that. And then if you still are waiting on information and you have nothing, a reasonable length of time passes again. By the way, in that first communication, you should say to them, you should make a commitment of how long you're going to let it go for you to get the information, how long you estimate it'll take to get the information, and within that time frame, you're then going to get back to them. And so you might say, hey, thank you very much for the inquiry. I received that, and your business is important to me. I need to check with X, Y, or Z third party to get all the information. I should be able to do that within the next 24 to 48 hours, and I will get back to you within that time frame. There's an example. Now, what also occurs is that then that third party fails you and you don't get the information you're looking for, and then you fail to get back to the customer. And I made that whole video about hiding behind the written word, and when it's uncomfortable and there's this tendency for people to not, if there's a potential for a situation to be contentious or adversarial in any way, we avoid those. You don't want to do that, address it head on, be proactive. And in the example I just gave, where your 24 or 48 hour window that you committed to is ticking away, and you can see you're not going to get the information you want to be able to meet your commitment, then you proactively get back to that customer in this example, or another team member, or your boss, or your employee, or whoever is listening to this, and you figuring out where this happens in your organization. And you say to them, hey, I know I told you that I would get that information. I am still waiting. Very sorry. You can see I've right away put some inflection in my voice. So depending on your business and how you operate and how you communicate with other stakeholders, this may be much better off as a phone call, as a face-to-face meeting, as opposed to an email. But I get it. A lot of you you need to run through the digital communications and some sort of chat or text message, that kind of thing. But the key here is that you don't allow that deadline that you gave yourself to pass before you get back to them proactively. That's good service. That's not infuriating. And the customer is not now thinking no news is not good news. They're not getting no news. They're not getting the information that they specifically requested necessarily, but they are getting an update from you. They know you're on top of it. They know you care. Remember, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And your customers are always, all your stakeholders are always sort of judging, does this person really care about me? You want your team, all your stakeholders to know yes, we want to have good communications, and I do care, and I'm on top of this, and I am professional. That's the image you want to send, and that's going to help your brand. Conversely, you will damage your brand by not doing this. Now, you may agree with everything I've said, and this might be like so often some of the topics I choose to talk about. It may seem obvious. I'm telling you, this is occurring in your business right now. And so just agreeing with me is not good enough. That's the starting point. Now you need to sort of root this out, and you have to find where this exists. You have to look for it and get rid of it. And it all starts with, an explanation and clarification of your expectations. So share this video with your team and say, hey, we don't want this in our culture. We want our organization to have a culture with one another of communication and clear communication, and certainly with our customers, good service, and it's just respectful. And so you share this and say, we'll be looking for this, and please remind one another, remind me if I'm guilty of this, and don't, for goodness sake, take advantage of our customers or disrespect our customers by not getting back to them and avoiding things just because you don't have the information. So it starts with clarifying your expectations, and then you have to inspect what you expect. You have to look for this and hold your people accountable. In Management 101, we talk about step 3, where you got to assume that the people engaging in the process are going to fail you. At least periodically, they're going to fail to meet expectations, and you've got to put some sort of fail-safe, a safety net in place in order to catch that. And then you have to administer consequences and coach on the behavior. Hold your people accountable to upholding this. If you agree with what I'm saying, you know this happens, you'd like to root it out because you do want to become more effective in your business. You do want to have a culture of communication, and you hate it when it happens to you, when you're waiting, when you're the customer and you're waiting to hear back from someone and you don't hear back from them. It's like pulling teeth. You've got to keep going back to them to get information. If that drives you nuts, or maybe as the manager, you send out something, question to one of your team members, and he fails to get back to you, and you're like, hey, could you please let me know what's going on with this? If this stuff drives you nuts, then you have to ask yourself, what are you doing to fix it? All right, so the 2 tips I gave you were, number 1, you've got to share your expectations. This video is a great way to do that within your organization. The second one is you have to inspect what you expect. You have to apply Management 101 thinking. Go to that video that I have on Management 101. It's like 5 or 7 minutes long. You'll learn how to do that, and you can root this out of your organization, because no news is not good news. That's where I want to leave it today, but I'm very curious from you. Are you going to fix this problem in your organization? The thing is, so often people don't seem to realize when they have a problem, or if they're the source of the problem in particular. They think, oh, well, he's not really referring to me. You're maybe oblivious to it. So ask your team, hey, am I guilty of doing this as the business owner, as your manager? Am I guilty of not getting back to you with information? How can we fix this? How can we, as an organization, ensure, what standards do we want to uphold? It's all about communication, remember? So yeah, leave a comment in the comments section and let us know if you've got a particular way of doing this in your organization. How do you make sure that communication is good and that you're keeping all stakeholders, you're respectful to all stakeholders by keeping them in the loop and updating them, and leave any kind of comment that we can learn from, because we need to learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.